My name is Madeline Grant, 33 years old, and for 15 years, I have been an unpaid servant in the very house that bears my family's name. Last Christmas Eve, the golden lights poured over the long dining table at Whitmore Estate. Crystal glasses clinked. Wine spilled at the rims while I, standing in a kitchen heavy with the smell of burnt butter, was stirring the 7th pot of sauce that day. My mother, Mrs. Diane Caldwell, sat at the head of the table. Velvet dress in crimson, pearls at her collar, calling out, "Hurry up. Madeline, Sabrina's guests shouldn't have to wait." My sister, Sabrina, aloft brightly among businessmen and politicians, her hand lifting a glass of wine like a queen, and me sleeves rolled up, hair messy. No one even remembered I existed. I saw my own reflection on the oven door, a woman cooking for 25 guests, yet with no seat at her own family's table. Even the housemaids were paid. I wasn't. Before I tell you how everything turned around from being the one ordered around in the kitchen to the woman the entire table rose to greet, take a second to hit, like if you've ever been underestimated just because you started from nothing. Not to support me, but to remind yourself that you don't need anyone's permission to succeed. And before we go on, drop the name of your city in the comments below. I'll read every single one line by line. Because I know, somewhere out there, someone is listening to this story, hoping to find themselves again. Now, come with me back to that Christmas night, when the very person they wanted to impress walked into the room and called me by a name they never expected. Boston. 15 years ago, the graduation ceremony took place in the Grand Hall of Whitmore Academy. I stood on the stage, my honors diploma trembling slightly in my hands. When the flashlights went off, I glanced down the 2 rows, reserved for family, were completely empty. My mother, Mrs. Diane Caldwell, had left early because Sabrina has an appointment with a fashion designer. The audience applauded, but the sound of those claps rang in my ears like cold wind sliding across glass. That was the first time I understood in my family. Success only mattered when it was attached to someone else, never to me. For many years after, every Thanksgiving, Christmas, or birthday, I played one fixed-role kitchen assistant table setter background decoration. The smell of turkey, red wine, the clinking of crystal glasses, and the laughter echoing from the dining room into the kitchen. Whenever guests asked, "Who is she?" my mother would only smile faintly and say, "My eldest. Madeline, she's still finding her direction." Finding her direction meant unemployed. It meant useless. Meanwhile, Sabrina, the youngest daughter, was always introduced as the most brilliant PR specialist in all of New England. When I was 23, at one of the family's fundraising galas, our relatives crowded around Sabrina as she proudly showed off her first contract. I carried a tray of champagne. My plain black dress made me look no different from the catering staff. One of the relatives murmured, just loud enough for me to hear, "Well, at least the Caldwells have one child to bring pride to the family." My mother smiled. She didn't object. I simply stood there, smiling back, my throat dry. In the bronze mirror behind the banquet table, I saw myself, a blurred silhouette reflected between candlelight and wine smoke. When Sabrina celebrated her 25th birthday, my mother put me in charge of the entire event. I cooked, decorated, and arranged the guest list. That evening, Sabrina wore a blush pink silk gown and a diamond necklace our mother had bought, and raised her glass to thank the guests. If it weren't for Mom, I wouldn't have the career I have today. Applause followed. My mother turned toward me, smiling sweetly, painfully so. "And you? Madeline, at least your cooking's better than last year." A draft from the balcony door blew in, scattering candle ashes. I didn't respond. I just nodded, picked up the fallen napkin, and continued pouring wine. That night, after everyone left, I cleaned the tables alone. A few crumbs of cake remained. the scent of candle wax mingling with dish soap. In the dark, I heard my mother's voice from the living room, speaking to my father. She just doesn't have what it takes to succeed. No matter how hard she tries, she'll never fit anywhere but the kitchen. I stood behind the wall, gripping a crystal glass so tight the rim cut into my fingers. Not because of her words, but because I realized she truly believed them. From that day on, I began quietly learning everything outside their site: event management, finance, culinary arts, and negotiation. At first it was curiosity, then passion, then salvation. I worked after hours, serving at grand events across Boston just to observe how things were run. No one at home knew. They thought I was taking a break to find a job. In truth, I was learning how to create one for myself. Once, I met a VIP guest, an elderly man who owned a small hotel chain. After the event, he told me, "Girl, if someone looks down on the hands that create experiences, they don't deserve a seat at the table." I wrote that sentence in my notebook. Later, it became the motto framed in my company's office. On Sabrina's 30th birthday, when they once again raised their glasses to the successful daughter, I quietly left the table, put on my coat, and stepped outside. Boston snow fell thick, covering the roof of my car with a silver glow. In my pocket was a white envelope, my first signed contract with Ashbury Resort Group worth $500,000. No one in the family knew. I looked up at the still-lit windows of the Whitmore mansion. They laughed. They talked. And they never once asked how I was doing. I simply smiled. They wanted me to stay in the kitchen. Good, because from that kitchen, I learned how to cook up my own success. And as my car pulled away from the gates, snow splattering against the windshield, I knew that was the last time I'd leave that house as a servant. Because inside my suitcase, among the signed papers, was a single, bold line: Grant & Co. Events. Founder Madeline Grant. 7 years after that snowy night in Boston, I walked into the glass headquarters of Grant & Co. Events. Right in the heart of Manhattan. Outside, the Hudson mist reflected off the silver-white logo on the facade. Inside, the open space carried the scent of Ethiopian coffee blending with freshly printed paper. A large screen displayed the event timeline from brand launches to charity galas in Miami. As I passed the pantry, employees stood to greet me, the sounds of keyboards and soft laughter mixed with the hum of the printer. On the main wall, metallic letters gleamed under the lights. If someone looks down on the hands that create experiences, they don't deserve a seat at the table. The same line once spoken by that hotel chain owner is now the motto that runs my company. Maria, the head chef, set a sample menu board on the desk. "Boss, Halcyon Hospitality is still waiting for the presentation on the Florida Resort Experience package." I nodded, my eyes scanning the meeting schedule. A red box marked December 26th, 9 a.m. Vivian Zhou, divided by Halcyon HQ. James, the operations director, approached with his iPad. "Everything's ready. If we land this contract, the company officially expands to Miami." I simply replied, "If." My voice was cool but steady, like steel forged beneath velvet. After everyone left, I sat alone in the quiet office, the warm light cast over my desk, where a small photo rested me with my first 3 employees in the rented kitchen back in 2015. I remembered those early nights in Soho, wiping tables while sketching plans on napkins. We once catered small gatherings, then slowly, contract by contract, the scale grew. No one knew that for every deal signed, I sent part of the profit to an anonymous scholarship fund in Boston, the same school where a girl named Madeline Caldwell once studied. I built this empire in silence. No loud PR campaigns. No magazine covers, just reputation. Passed quietly from client to client. Our signature: quiet luxury, opulent, refined, never boastful. My secret was simple. Every detail must make clients feel respected, because that was the one thing I never received from my own family. An email notification appeared on screen. Forbes, 40 under 40 nomination. I smiled. Not for fame, but for how the world now saw me. Long before my mother ever could. The intercom buzzed. James's voice, Madeline. The CFO just sent a notice. If we secure Halcyon, Vego National. If not, our competitor, Ashbury Signature, has underbid by 8%. They're ready to swallow the entire Q1 market. I stood and poured another cup of coffee. Then failure isn't an option. The aroma rose sharp, earthy, and warm. In the reflection of the desk light, I saw my hands, the same hands that once served them. Now, signing contracts they could only dream of. By afternoon, the inbox lit up. Subject: personal invitation. Vivian Zhou, CEO. Halcyon Hospitality. I opened it. Line by line appeared Madeline. We highly value the service philosophy and execution of Grant & Co. Events. The Halcyon board would like to meet the founder in person at 9 a.m. on December 26th at Florida Resort to finalize an exclusive partnership worth $2 million U.S. dollars. Condition: founder attendance required. Vivian Zhou. I leaned back in my chair. Time: exactly 1 day after Christmas. Location: Florida. If I showed up, everything could change forever. If I didn't, the company might lose its golden chance. James entered, the light glinting off his glasses. Flights and rooms are booked. Pre-dinner with the Halcyon team at 7 p.m. on the 25th. 36 hours left. I nodded. Good. Leave the rest to me. He paused at the door. Madeline, do you think your mother will hear about this contract? I smiled faintly and said nothing. When the door closed, I glanced at the staff list. 50 names. 50 lives. Maria just bought her first house. James was enrolling his 2 kids in a good school. And Tessa was caring for her ill mother. I whispered, I'm not signing this for myself, I'm signing it for them. On the wall, the golden light fell on the framed photo, First Office 2015. Our smiles back then were all the motivation I needed to keep going. Christmas Eve, December 24th. The office was silent. I locked the door and placed the Halcyon contract inside my leather briefcase. The printer whirred, printing the last page of the presentation deck. Outside, Manhattan glowed in festive lights. I poured myself a glass of wine and took a deep breath, oak and red apple. Everything was ready. Me laptop blinked new email notification. From Diane Caldwell. Subject: urgent Christmas dinner. I clicked. 15 lines of instructions. Start prep at 12 noon. 7 main dishes and 10 sides. Use the Waterford silver set. Here's the guest list. Don't make us look bad in front of them. The list went on, until the last line froze me in place. Vivian Zhou, CEO. Halcyon Hospitality. My eyes stopped on the screen. My heartbeat slowed. On the same day, the person they wanted to impress was the very one I was about to sign a $2 million deal with. I smiled, not bitterly this time, but coldly. Almost numb. Finally, their dinner table is about to meet mine. The phone vibrated. The name flashing on the screen, Mom. Her voice came sharp and commanding. Just like always, be home by noon tomorrow. Cook for 25 guests. And don't embarrass us. I stayed silent. The light shimmered through the wine glass. Crimson waves flickering like fire. Outside, Manhattan sparkled in the Christmas night, and I was preparing for the confrontation they never saw coming. The wall clock struck 10 p.m. Outside, Manhattan was still as bright as day. Christmas lights reflecting across the glass desk. I was holding a half-finished glass of wine when the phone vibrated. Mom calling. I answered. Are you trying to drive me insane? Madeline. Her voice rang out like cold metal. You'll be home by noon tomorrow. Sabrina has important guests, and I don't want them to see this house in chaos. I glanced at my computer screen. The presentation slides for Halcyon still open. I have a company meeting the next morning. Mom. A company. What childish nonsense now. I've told you 1,000 times your little cooking events don't count as a career. I let out a faint laugh. This time it's different. It's a contract. Don't be delusional. People don't sign contracts with cooks. The words dropped like the sound of shattering crystal. I heard music in the background, the choir singing. Silent night guests laughing. She was still at the party. Sabrina has some big names over, including the CEO of that Halcyon thing. I want everything to be perfect. Halcyon, I repeated, my voice lowering. Yes. Vivian Zhou. Sabrina says she's a major figure in the hotel industry. If you still have a shred of decency, come home and make us a proper dinner. I looked at the meeting note glowing on the screen, the red line Halcyon board, December 26th, 9 a.m. Mom. I have an appointment with her too. Don't be ridiculous. You. Sabrina's meeting with serious partners. Don't embarrass us. The office intercom blinked. James calling. A message popped up simultaneously. Pre-dinner Halcyon confirmed. 7 p.m. Tonight. If missed, they'll switch to Ashbury signature. I took a slow breath. My tone even. I can't come. Mom, I have a flight. A flight, good Lord. To where? Miami. To wash dishes to Florida. To sign a contract with Halcyon. A soft laugh came through the line, but it wasn't Mom. It was Sabrina. Oh my God. You still lie just like in school. She drawled. Voice syrupy through the speakerphone. Halcyon doesn't need you. You think your little Manhattan parties impress them, Sabrina? Give the phone back to Mom. I said quietly. Wait, how much do you want to cook? $200, or would you prefer a public thank you? Glasses clinked. And a cork popped open on her end. I even heard a man's joking voice. So Madeline's your private chef? And Sabrina replied. Light as air, sort of. She prefers cooking over doing real work. That sentence froze the entire room around me. The wind outside brushed against the window, ticking in sync with the clock hands. Sabrina, I said slowly, I don't sell my time to cook for others anymore. Not for 200. Not for 2,000. Oh, really, what are you now, a CEO? She mocked. Laughing. Yes. Silence. Exactly 1 second long. Then Mom's voice cut through. Sharper than chilled wine. If you hang up, don't ever come back. My phone screen blinked James boarding at 8:07 confirmed. I kept holding the line. Unmoved. Mom, I said softly, I can't abandon dozens of employees just to come home and cook for Sabrina. Family comes before work, not when family only remembers you when they need someone to set the table. I heard a glass drop on her end, a dry, brittle crack. Sabrina snatched the phone. You're unbelievable. Mom's sick with stress because of you. You've been embarrassing her for 15 years. Really, I closed my eyes. Then tomorrow morning, I'll return her honor in my own way. I opened my laptop and attached the file. Grant, Co. Events. Portfolio. PDF to the family group chat. Along with a business card embossed with our logo. This company has existed for 5 years. And the person Mom's desperate to impress happens to be my client. Silence. Then chaos erupted through the line. Mom turned on the speaker. Her voice trembling but loud. Did you all hear that? She thinks she's somebody. A woman's voice broke in. Excuse me, did you say Madeline Grant? Sabrina jumped in fast. No. Just someone with the same name. My heartbeat slowed. Vivian Zhou. I recognized that voice from our video call last week. I spoke evenly. Coldly. No. Mrs. Zhou. It's me. Both ends went completely silent. I could hear my mother's shaky breath through the line. Madeline, she stammered. You. No need. We'll see each other on the morning of December 26th. I paused, my tone dropping lower. Depending on how you want to be remembered as the woman who humiliated me, or the first to say congratulations. Madam Grant. I hung up. The office fell silent again. Only the printer hummed. Finishing the last page of the contract. On the screen, 2 timelines glowed side by side. Flight 807, JFK, Florida meeting at 9 a.m. Halcyon boardroom. I took a sip of wine, the tart apple flavor spreading across my tongue. Outside, Manhattan's bells rang in the holiday night. I opened the window. The cold wind swept in, carrying faint church chimes from afar. Tomorrow, I whispered, they'll finally see where my table truly stands. Christmas morning. The pale sunlight of New York slipped through the curtains, touching the glass desk where the Halcyon hospitality. The contract rested neatly inside a leather briefcase. I checked the schedule again, December 25th. 7 p.m. Pre-dinner, December 26th, 9 a.m. Board meeting. One deep breath. Then I opened the flight app. Last night's 8:07 flight was gone, but there were still open seats on the 2:45. I booked immediately. I couldn't let 50 people in my company stand on the edge of risk because of the emotions of a family that never believed in me. I texted James ticket. Changed. I'll arrive at the resort by 6:45. He replied with a clapping emoji, brief but warm. I locked the office door and left the building. Manhattan was so cold that every breath turned into silver mist. A doorman wished me Merry Christmas. I simply nodded back. On the way to the taxi, I opened my phone and deleted the unread thread of messages from my mother. It felt light, like taking off a wet coat. At JFK Airport, that Christmas noon, the crowd was packed. Announcements of flight delays scattered through the air like rain. I pulled my suitcase. Waiting in the check-in line under the white fluorescent light shining on the polished stone floor. My phone screen kept lighting up, Mom, if you go, don't ever come back. Sabrina, thanks for ruining Mom's Christmas. Halcyon EA confirm founder ETA pre-dinner is still at 7 p.m. I checked my watch, 12:40. The line hadn't moved. A staff member announced Flight 245 may be delayed due to minor storms in Florida. A passenger nearby grumbled, calmly. I opened the airline app and switched to standby on the 1:55 flight. If Halcyon was the gateway to take my company national, I would not arrive late, not even by a minute. I thought of Maria testing the menu in the main kitchen, of James stressing over the event timeline. They believed in me, not in a Caldwell's daughter. When boarding began, another message came from Sabrina, Mom's crying. Happy now, I almost replied, then stopped. A voice echoed in my head. If they choose tears over reflection, it's no longer your responsibility. I turned off my phone. On the plane, the air felt unusually calm. Soft daylight reflected on the tray table where I had my laptop open, the Halcyon presentation glowing on screen. The final slide read, "Quiet luxury isn't silence, it's confidence without noise." I tweaked a few details and added images for the Elysium retreat concept. A message popped in from James through the internal system. Competitor Ashbury signature, just checked in at the resort. They're having a quick meeting with Vivian this afternoon. Moments later, an email from Halcyon appeared. If the founder misses the pre-dinner, the board will mark execution risk. I smiled faintly. No threat could ever scare me more than 15 years of being looked down on. I closed my eyes for 10 minutes, letting the hum of the engine lull me. Beside me, a couple exchanged a Christmas card. I smiled quietly. My Christmas lay inside the contract, burning bright in that leather briefcase. The plane landed in Florida at 5:20 p.m. The air was warm and humid. The scent of sea salt, mixed with roasted coconut, drifted faintly from afar. As I stepped out of the terminal, a Halcyon car waited with a placard reading Mrs. Grant. On the drive to the resort, I gazed through the window, the sky fading from gold to violet. Palm trees cast long shadows across the boulevard. fairy lights twinkling like tinsel along hotel porches. The driver spoke softly, "Mrs. Zhou is in the lobby. Dinner starts at 7. I nodded. "Get me there right on time." The clock showed 6:47 as the car stopped before the entrance of the Ashbury Terrace Resort. Inside, the sounds of a piano and crystal glasses intertwined, elegant, yet understated. The exact style I'd built my brand upon. I adjusted my blazer, grabbed the leather briefcase, and stepped through the tall glass doors. The cool air inside carried a trace of white orchid. A group of people were conversing near a long table draped in linen, then a woman's voice, familiar, almost chilling last night. I attended the strangest Christmas dinner in Boston. They served pizza on antique silverware. I recognized it, Vivian Zhou. She turned, her eyes meeting mine. A brief silence. Then Vivian smiled softly. "We just left the same story behind." Madeline Grant. "Shall we sign a new one now?" I smiled. Striding toward the conference table, the echo of my heels on the marble floor, marking the final punctuation of the past. An honor. Vivian. The lights glinted on the Halcyon Hospitality banner behind her, shimmering like a belated blessing from the universe. I tightened my grip on the briefcase, ready to open the contract that would change everything. Whitmore Estate. Boston, the night of December 24th. 6:50 p.m. The kitchen was bright yet cold. The oven silent, like an engine shut down. Diane Caldwell gripped her phone. 8th call. 9th. 10th. The same response every time we're closed on Christmas Eve. The thick menu sheet crumpled in her fist. "Don't panic," said Sabrina, checking her lipstick. A pink satin dress and a diamond bracelet on her wrist. "I have my own contacts." She dialed. Voice lowered. "Hey. VIP order. Please. Unavailable. Second try. Third. Still the same." Sabrina frowned. Diane clenched her teeth. She betrayed this family. She has to be here. The doorbell rang. Cold air and the scent of woody perfume swept in with the fur coats. The living room gleamed like a second sky glass and chandeliers scattering starlight across Persian carpets. Polite murmurs flickered. "Lovely house. So tasteful." Diane smiled tightly, her eyes darting toward the empty kitchen. 7 o'clock. Vivian Zhou arrived, black silk coat. Tina Kranapin. Eyes sweeping the room, pausing at the half-open kitchen door. Sabrina rushed forward. "Missa Zhou, Halcyon's cue. One needs an emotional branding angle." "And I," Vivian smiled. "After dinner." Her tone was soft as silk and just as impenetrable. Sabrina turned back to her mother, whispering, "Order pizza. They have truffle." Diane hesitated. The 11th call is still unanswered. She nodded. "Do it." A knock at the door. The delivery man stood on the porch, his breath turning to mist. "Fourrage. One gluten-free." Heat rose into Sabrina's hands as she took the boxes. The smell of oregano and cheese drifted through the grand hall, clashing with the sandalwood candles. Diane whispered, "Put it on the plates." "No." The silver trays. Quickly, the engraved knife slid through melted cheese, the metallic click sounding like blasphemy. A guest snorted. "How inventiva." Diane tightened her jaw. "A minor inconvenience." She walked into the room with a smile that stopped at the corners of her lips. "My eldest daughter can be a bit unpredictable." At the kitchen doorway, Vivian paused. No scent of butter. No stew simmering. No clatter of knives. Only a spotless counter and a silent oven. Her eyes narrowed as if noting a small piece of evidence. Sabrina began her pitch by the fireplace. "Halcyon has a legacy of luxury. I want to elevate it into a story that touches the heart." She handed over an iPad. Vivian asked, "Where's the chef?" Sabrina smiled. "My sister. But tonight?" She had a problem. Diane added, "You know how she is unstable." A marketing executive lifted her phone. snapping a photo of pizza on antique silver. The image spread through a group chat, and then onto stories. When quiet luxury meets rush hour, whispers shifted colors around the room. They've been bragging about a perfect dinner all month. Family chef. Where's the sister? The doorbell rang again. A temp server reheated a few slices on a copper pan. The cheese burned. Smoke curling through the vent. Sabrina signaled for more candles. The amber scent fought with the smell of pizza, forming an awkward cloud above the guests. Vivian raised her glass, eyes following the silver Waterford tray. What emotion do you want to evoke? Sabrina answered, voice trembling slightly. Perfection. The word fell directly onto the tray. Slick with oil, desperate to save face. Diane began telling a story about her ungrateful eldest daughter. Her words were sweet, her meaning sharp. Everyone heard. 7:35. Vivian checked her watch and set down her glass. Thank you for the invitation. I'll have to leave early. Diane panicked. Oh. The main course is about to be served. Vivian glanced at the tray, then at the tower of cardboard boxes in the kitchen. I've learned enough tonight. She left. Outside, a gust of wind snuffed out a string of lights. Sabrina froze. Her iPad buzzed. A message from a colleague, pizza on Waterford. The photos spreading. Diane snatched the iPad. On the screen, the Domino's box, the silver platter, and the mocking caption. Turn it off, she hissed. But the storm had already left her hands. The foyer glowed gold and dim. The piano played soft chords. The ocean whispered in the distance. Vivian stood with her assistant. Alerts are flooding in, the EA said. Open them. The screen enlarged the photo of pizza on silver. In the background, the Caldwell family portrait, and off to the side, a young woman standing slightly apart. Madeline. Vivian zoomed in. Then zoom it out. The pre-dinner began. Madeline walked in, graphite gray briefcase in hand. Vivian set her glass down, eyes locking on hers. Last night, I attended a Christmas dinner in Boston. They spoke endlessly about perfection. Then they served pizza on silver and said the eldest daughter was unreliable. Silence. Diane Caldwell. Vivian paused half a beat. Is your mother? Madeline set the briefcase down. The clasp clicked softly against the table leg. They'll find out, she said, her voice low and cold. Just not the way they expect. The light in the halcyon boardroom was soft and warm, like the dawn of a new beginning. The polished walnut table reflected two folders side by side, the logos of Halcyon Hospitality and Grant & Co. Events. The scents of wood, paper, and lightly roasted coffee blended together, creating that quiet air of meetings whose outcomes were already inevitable. Vivian Zhou sat at the head of the table, fingertips resting on the edge of her folder, eyes narrowing slightly as she looked at me. Diane Caldwell is your mother. The question fell into the room, low and clear, like the sound of a pin dropping. I raised my head, unflinching. Yes, I said, but that connection ends in blood, not in values. Vivian nodded slowly, her gaze no longer doubtful, more like she had just confirmed what she had already sensed. I thought so, she said, voice as still as water. Last night, when they spoke about you, I saw the difference in your very absence. I smiled faintly, my hands interlaced on the table. She leaned back and continued. No one can drain the grandeur from a room simply by not being in it unless that person is its soul. Perhaps I just chose not to bow anymore, I replied. Vivian tilted her head, the corner of her mouth curving slightly. Sometimes silence is the loudest voice. And you, Madeline, just made all of Boston hear it. The room stilled. The Halcyon executives exchanged brief glances. They didn't understand the whole story, but everyone could feel it. The balance of power in this story had just shifted. Vivian turned to them. I will sign this contract today, she said. regardless of any rumors you've heard. A cautious voice came from the financial director, Mrs. Zhou. The PR concern. If the Caldwell family... Vivian cut him off calmly. The Caldwell family already handled PR with pizza on silver. A muffled laugh escaped someone. I stayed silent, my eyes as still as a lake. Vivian continued, her voice firm. She manages 3 branches and 50 employees, with profits up 42% this year. Halcyon doesn't buy Prestiga. We invest in capability. And that capability did not come from the Caldwells. She turned her phone in her hand. The light reflected off it like a sliver of a blade. But before I sign, she said quietly, I want to make a call to someone in Boston. I don't like leaving debts unpaid, not even in justice. I said nothing. Inside, a small current passed through me, not fear, but the calm of someone about to watch the curtain fall. Vivian put the call on speaker. 3 beeps. Then a tired, hoarse, female voice. This is Diane Caldwell. Mrs. Diane, Vivian said. Voice soft but cold. This is Vivian Zhou, CEO of Halcyon Hospitality. I believe we just attended the same rather peculiar dinner. Silence on the other end. I just wanted to let you know. Vivian went on. Each word slow and precise, like scissors cutting through thin silk. That the woman you called unstable is sitting right in front of me, and we're about to sign a contract worth $2 million. The room fell silent. Only the sound of a pen sliding across paper. I didn't look at the phone, but I could almost see my mother's face, horrified, confused, disbelieving, as if she had finally met the true boundary of consequence. Vivian's voice was steady, yet razor sharp. You know, that pizza last night was fascinating. It made me realize something. There are people who think they're the guests of honor, but in truth, they've been sitting at the wrong table all along. I heard a small sound on the other end, perhaps a glass shattering, then silence. Vivian set down her pen and signed Vivian Zhou. Contract complete, she said. It's still meeting my eyes. Thank you for teaching me a lesson in character in the worst way possible. I nodded lightly, hands still folded before me. For the first time, I felt no anger, only release. Vivian capped her pen, stood, and extended her hand. Congratulations. Halcyon officially partners with Grant & Co. We shook hands. She lost a daughter, Vivian said quietly. And I gained a partner, I replied evenly. And I gained what they never gave: respect. Applause filled the room. But Vivian raised her hand. Keep this silence, she said. Success doesn't need noise. I sat back down. The flashes from Halcyon's media team swept across my face, reflecting silver in my eyes. Vivian spoke to her assistant. Prepare the press release. Launch at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Headline: Halcyon X. Stellar partnership. The assistant asked, do we emphasize built without family support, as the papers suggested? Vivian looked at me, then shook her head slowly. No. Right. Built with integrity. I smiled faintly, unlocking my phone. 3 missed calls, Mum. I looked at them for a few seconds, then turned off the screen. I think yesterday's lesson will last a lifetime. Vivian nodded, her eyes gleaming like glass. Then let the world see what they tried to hide. Outside, waves lapped gently against the shore. Inside, the LED screen came to life, the headline appearing word by word: Breaking Halcyon signs exclusive partnership with Grant & Co., founded by Madeline Caldwell. I looked up, my heart as calm as the sea. In Boston, dawn was breaking, and when that light reached Whitmore Estate, they would finally know my silence was never weakness. It was the most elegant ending strike of all. The Florida morning was warm and clear as crystal. Sunlight spread over the surface of the sea at the Ashbury Terrace, each beam cutting through the waves like shards of glass. I sat in a corner of the lobby, laptop open before me. The first headline glowed on the screen: Halcyon signs exclusive contract with Grant & Co., founded by Madeline Caldwell. On the next tab was an analysis piece. The girl once undervalued by her family built an empire from nothing. The comments flowed like a tide beneath it. Thank you for proving daughters are not shadows. Silence is also a way of saying, I am enough. I smiled faintly. The scent of coffee drifted through the air. And for the first time, I understood what I had signed. Wasn't just a contract, it was the right to claim my own name. News traveled faster than the ocean breeze. In Boston. Snow thinned across the steps of Whitmore Estate. My mother sat before the fireplace, her face stiff, even under the red glow of the flames. On her iPad, the breaking headline kept looping. Behind her, Sabrina stood by the chair. Mascaras mudged. Phone ringing nonstop, clients, withdrawing contracts. Colleagues sending her the link, pizza on silver. Mother called someone from the club, forcing her voice to stay calm. It was just a misunderstanding. Silence. Then a click. The sound of relationships peeling off the wall like flaking paint. Images from the night before flooded social media. The Caldwell dining table. Open pizza boxes. The family portrait where I stood slightly apart. And the caption, quiet luxury. Fast delivery. Someone edited 2 photos together, me in the Halcyon boardroom, beside a silver tray with melted cheese. No one was angry. Only confusion mixed with quiet embarrassment. The truth was now visible. Those who believed they stood above others had only been standing on the wrong floor. Florida shimmered in stillness. Vivian entered the lobby, nodding toward the screen, looping the 24-hour timeline from the dinner to the deal. Are you ready for the press conference? She asked. I nodded. Golden light poured down the hallway. Our shadows moved in parallel like twin lines of purpose. In the press room, camera shutters clicked steadily, not in chaos, but in rhythm. A reporter asked Madeline, what would you say to people who still hide their true worth because of family? I looked toward Vivian. She gave a slight nod. Don't wait for someone to untie the rope around your wrists. I said calmly, some knots only break when you stand tall. No applause. None needed. In the mirror behind me, I saw a woman who no longer looked down to ask permission to exist. At that very moment, in Boston, the footage from the Christmas dinner surfaced online, my mother's low voice saying, the eldest one, unstable, followed by Sabrina placing pizza on a silver tray. No one shouted. There were only cold glances and a few indifferent shrugs. But indifference, I realized, weighs heavier than anger. Beneath the video, the top comment read, we are respected only as much as we respect ourselves. This time, no one laughed. When the conference ended, Vivian touched my hand lightly. Good, she said simply. We walked along the balcony, overlooking the ocean. Waves rippled, sunlight scattered like fragments of glass. My phone buzzed 3 times. James Miami is asking for the March schedule. I smiled. In the photo Maria sent, the Grant & Co. kitchen team beamed beneath the open concept lights. None of them were defined by anyone else anymore. That evening, the resort lit up. A small dinner by the lake. Champagne glasses, glinting gold. I left the table early, slipped off my heels, and opened the curtains. The coastal city shimmered like a map of freedom. I was about to turn off my phone when the screen lit up. Dad. I froze. He rarely called, always the shadow behind my mother. Nodding on cue, I answered. His voice was raspy and slow. Madeline, I read everything. I know now. I stayed silent. Your mother wants to see you, he said. Hesitant, I looked out the window, where the horizon drew a clean line between sea and sky. For what? Father A. Faint clink, the sound of a glass being set down. This time, not to command. A pause. To apologize. I didn't respond. In Boston. Snow was probably falling over Whitmore's roof. In Florida. The violin by the lake stitched the night together with its silver thread. I remembered Vivian's words. Success doesn't need noise. Perhaps forgiveness doesn't either. Tomorrow, I said softly. 8 a.m. Main lobby. No one else. He exhaled the sound like someone setting down a heavy stone. Thank you. I hung up, staring into the mirror. The woman in it no longer looked angry, only serene, like someone who had walked through every storm and found stillness. I closed the curtains, letting the night sew shut whatever tears were left. Outside, the waves were already erasing the footprints of the day gone by. The Florida morning felt cleansed. The lake mirrored a sky tinted with honey, and the main hall of the Ashbury Terrace was quiet, except for the faint sound of piano drifting in from the banquet room across the corridor. I stood before the tall glass window, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. The clock struck. 8 o'clock sharp. A figure appeared at the far end of the hall, not the commanding posture of someone who once entered every room as if the world should make way, but a smaller woman, shoulders drawn, hands gripping a canvas bag, not wearing a single piece of jewelry. Madeline, my mother called softly, her voice sliding across the distance between us. I turned. There was no anger. No fear, only the calm after a storm. Please. Sit down, I said. She sat, her hand still clutching the fabric bag like a child, afraid of losing her belongings. After a moment, she spoke. I was wrong. The sentence was so short it almost felt unreal coming from someone who had always been right in every story. She lowered her head. I've been afraid to say those words for years. Afraid because admitting them means everything I believed in would collapse. I stayed silent. You know, she went on, her voice breaking. That night, when Vivian called, I truly lost balance. I realized I hadn't just lost a dinner. I had lost the right to be proud of my own daughter. I let her continue. I raised a golden child because I was afraid. Afraid of being less. Afraid of others' judgment. I thought if I had a perfect daughter to display, the emptiness inside would go away. I nodded slightly, not in agreement, but in understanding. People only stop hurting others when they begin to recognize how much they've hurt themselves. I set my coffee down. Are you apologizing to me or to yourself? She looked up. Eyes wet, but no tears fell. Both. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a white envelope. I wrote this last night. Not to send to you, to send to the world. I opened it. Inside was a short, sincere letter dated today, along with a handwritten statement. I, Steven, Diane Caldwell, will issue a public apology, resign from the Whitmore board, and begin psychological therapy for 6 months. I read it slowly, each word flowing like water over stone. Then I looked up. If you truly want to make things right, we'll need clear boundaries. I reached into my bag and drew out a stack of papers I had prepared the night before, not just a businesswoman's habit, but the practice of someone who had learned to protect herself. These are my conditions. She nodded. No protest. First, all future family events must hire independent teams. If you want Grant & Co. to survey, you'll pay as any client would. No exceptions. She said nothing, her hands tightening together on the table. Second, therapy, the entire family. You are included. 6 months. Minimum. Of course. Third, I met her gaze. You'll stop using the term golden child. Sabrina deserves to be free from that role. She closed her eyes and nodded faintly. I understand. And lastly, you must deliver that apology publicly. Not for gossip, but so I know you have the courage to face the truth. She took the pen and signed her name. No hesitation. No negotiation. When she looked up, light filtered through the glass, catching in her eyes like ripples of water. Thank you for still sitting here, she said. I replied. I'm not here so you can be forgiven. I'm here so you can begin. About 15 minutes later, my father walked in. He wore a wrinkled shirt, hat in hand, his eyes uncertain like a man who had stepped into the wrong room. Dad, I said quietly, I have no defense. He began. Silence is also a way of choosing sides. And I chose wrong. I know, I said. He stepped closer, voice trembling. I'm proud of you, Maddie. Not because you succeeded, but because you didn't let hatred destroy you the way pride destroyed me. I smiled faintly. I just learned to stand tall. That's all. Mother looked up. Hesitant. If you agree, she said, I'd like to make things right. A fundraising gala for young female entrepreneurs. And I'd like to hire Grant & Co. to host. Full rate. No discount. I nodded. Send the brief. I'll treat you like any other client. She smiled a trembling but genuine smile. No one hugged. None needed. There was only a silence cleaner than any apology. When they left, I remained by the window. Outside, sunlight poured over the lake, breaking into 1,000 small shards of light. I opened my phone and saw new headlines. Diane Caldwell publicly apologizes to her daughter, pledges support for Women Entrepreneurs Fund. Beneath the article, a top comment read, Sometimes justice needs no punishment, only the courage to admit wrong. I exhaled softly. Perhaps. Finally, everything had returned to its rightful place. A sound of footsteps made me look up. A young woman stood at the doorway, brown hair tied low, holding an old wooden box. Sabrina. Light reflected on her face. No longer the smugness of someone who once won, only the look of a person learning how to start over. Madeline, she whispered, voice trembling. I brought some things. They used to be yours. Mom told me to throw them away. But I kept them. I looked at the box. On the lid, Caldwell Im. C. 2004. I rose, step by step, set it on the table. I said softly. She placed it down and took a step back. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Not for Mom. For myself. I looked at her for a long time. Then opened the box. Inside lay a silver hair clip and a 16th birthday card, the one I thought had disappeared with my old room. Something tightened gently in my chest. I didn't cry. I only said quietly, Thank you for not throwing it away. Morning light glimmered across the lake. I closed the box. It felt like closing a book that still smelled of salt and tears. Outside, seabirds flew low, cutting across the rising sun, and I understood justice isn't revenge. Sometimes, it's simply the moment you look at the people who once hurt you and no longer need them to bow their heads. The Florida night shone like a crystal crown. Across the lake, the lights from the Ashbury Terrace rippled into 1,000 winding reflections. Inside the gala hall, silk gowns glided softly across the floor. Champagne glasses touched gently like the heartbeat of a new beginning. On the main banner, the words gleamed clearly. Women Rebuild Charity Gala hosted by Diane Caldwell. Organized by Grant & Co. I walked through the grand doors. The flashlights flared, but this time, I didn't turn away. My team operated the event like a symphony, James at technical control, Maria overseeing logistics, and Sabrina for the first time standing by the media table. Eyes focused, no longer searching for the spotlight. Diane and Richard sat in the front row. She wore no diamonds, only a thin olive green scarf around her neck. As I passed by, she nodded slightly. No words but enough. I stepped onto the stage. The microphone waiting. The lights dimmed. The room grew still. As if everyone understood, this was a moment once taken from me. I was asked. I began. How do you overcome being underestimated by your own family? I paused, looking around. The truth is, there's no easy way. You just have to choose. Either you shrink forever, or you stand tall. And let your work speak for you. A breath of silence. No one owes you respect unless you respect yourself first. The light shifted. Diane lifted her head. Her eyes shimmering, but this time, she didn't hide them. She sat quietly in the shadows, not stepping into my light. She didn't need to anymore. Music swelled the violin, rising like a soft breath. I saw Sabrina wiping her tears, smiling genuinely as the hall filled with long, steady applause. The young women in the crowd looked up, as if seeing a path they could finally walk. When the lights turned amber, I stepped down from the stage. My phone vibrated. A message from Vivian. Congratulations. And welcome to the National Advisory Board for Women Entrepreneurs. I looked around the very room I had once been forbidden to enter under the title of the help. Now, every staff member, every light, and every note of music carried my name not because of power, but because I had chosen respect. I left the hall as the final melody played. Outside, the night breeze carried the scent of salt and jasmine. I smiled faintly. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It only redefines the future.